There's been a lot of talk in the media recently about Kanye West and anti-Semitism.
And I want to talk about the Jewish comment. It's actually proving the exact point that I made.
In my journey throughout Israel, I've had the chance to interact with people who identify as Hebrew Israelite. While not directly related to each other, there are many groups around different parts of the world, including the United States and Israel, who identify as the same bloodline. While they aren't related in any of their dogma or beliefs at all, the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, which is the community that I got a chance to interact with in Israel, in the Village of Peace in Dimona, are vastly distinct from the American groups of Black Hebrew Israelites. Very important to say it out of the gate, they are unrelated, these two groups. But there have been instances that individuals within the groups of the Black Hebrew Israelites in America have spread anti-Semitism and violence against mainstream Jewry. It's similar to how there are many different branches and groups of Jewish ideology, like conservatives and reform, orthodox, liberal, conservative. While all these groups believe that they stem from the ancestors of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, from a similar bloodline, they are not directly related in their beliefs and their belief structure. For the different Hebrew Israelite groups, this is a similar case. While believing they are part of the same bloodline, their belief systems and their morals are not related at all, and they never have been. The statements and claims that came from Kanye West within the last few weeks have been repetitions of the most horrific tropes and repeating the same beats as the pogroms that were spread against Jewish people around not just Europe, but the entire world. These statements are ones that have directly affected my ancestors, my family, my immediate family, and family of many, many friends of mine across the Jewish world, whether they were from Israel or the United States or Europe or Asia or the Middle East. For those of you guys who are new to the channel and you don't know, I've been traveling across the land of Israel, showing you guys different people groups who live within this land. We've been sitting down with them for long conversations, talking about the hard truths of what it's like to live on the ground. In the last episode of the series, we got a chance to meet the people who claim to be the Hebrew Israelites, who are based in a small town called Dimona, in the south of Israel. Today we're going to be giving you guys a real inside look at what the thoughts and belief system of this community are. And we're going to line them up directly to the horrific statements that were said by Kanye West to give you the opportunity to make your own judgment and see what you actually feel. The statements made by Kanye West, in my opinion, are not representative of this group at all in any context in what they believe today. And I'm talking specifically about the group that resides in Israel. But they've been through their own struggles and hardships, and they have a really, really interesting and compelling story that I think the world should listen to. So let's learn about the Hebrew Israelite community. Right outside of the Peace Village, which is the Hebrew Israelite community.
First members of the community received our permanent residency. We had to build our own institutions because we have to somehow, we have to continue to live.
What's the actual size of the community?
We just continue to grow and to expand. This allows us to be able to connect to our skin color and have pride in who we are. Because here we are, Black people from Israel. We live in Israel.
That military thing, is it government mandated or that's voluntary from the community?
We volunteer to go. Every opportunity that we have, in whatever capacity we're able to serve, we try and do so.
One of the main subjects that's taught here is culture and tradition of the community.
If you had to speak for the community or generalize, what are your thoughts on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
It's not just about land, it's not just about territory, it's way beyond that. But at the end of the day, we're actually family. We both want to live in peace. We are not enemies.
Amen to that.
Family doesn't mean that you have to be from the same bloodline all the time.
Right, that's true. Shalom Chaverim, and welcome back to Dimona, Israel. I'm here right outside of the Peace Village, which is the Hebrew Israelite community here in Dimona. I'm actually joined by a fellow friend of mine, a new friend that I made recently. So many friendly faces here.
Yes,
this is my friend Ashriel. How you doing, brother?
How you feeling?
Good, man.
Good to meet
Can you tell the people who you are?
My name is Ashriel. I'm 31 years old, and I'm one of the spokespersons for this community, this beautiful community, the Village of Peace. And we're gonna go and move around a bit to kind of give you an understanding of what it is that we built here for 53 years. And I think we should start with the most important institution, in my opinion, which is the school.
Cool, man. I'm really excited. Yesterday I had a chance because you set me up with some wonderful people to go around and explore.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure that there's a lot of people who left comments on the video wondering about, the tougher conversations, the deeper conversations, stuff that we really want to talk to, but the nitty gritty. And that is what Ashriel is here for. He's going to give us a deeper insight on some of the hardships, the more serious aspects of this life. But we're going to start right here with the school. The school is actually called Achva. And this is Ben Ami, right?
Ben Ami. top
Yeah.
is this was in 2003 when the first members of the community received permanent residency. Abraham Fawaz, who was then the Minister of Interior, he ordered the Ministry of Interior to provide permanent residency to the entire community.
Wow.
Which obviously didn't happen, so that's part of those hardships that we're actually going to discuss, because a lot of the decisions that were passed down by the government officials over the last 53 years, they just was not implemented. And we have a theory on the reason why they weren't implemented, and that's what we'll get into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is the video to talk about this stuff. I haven't seen many people sharing this platform of like hardships of this community too much, and I'd love to get into it. I'd love to understand it.
It's not really just about the hardships like that, but it's more about the challenges that we faced, that brought us to the point that we are now. Because had it not been for the challenges that we faced, we wouldn't have been able to establish what we established here. Because as you see, so many other communities who migrate to Israel, who make Aliyah, who come here for a specific purpose, at some point or another, they kind of lose their actual purpose for migrating to Israel. And it wasn't for us just to come to Israel to have a place to live or looking for a democratic state, because the majority of the people who came to Israel from America,
Yeah.
they were middle class people who had pretty good jobs, who had good careers, who were pretty well off where they were, and because of their connection to this land. And so our connection has always been sort of undermined, because first of all, our subscription to the biblical aspect of the halakha as opposed to the rabbinical aspect of the halakha. And so we've just established for ourselves a community that we allow ourselves to be able to follow the tenets of the Bible as they are, without too much intervention, without too many adds or subtractions. We found that the biblical narrative was the narrative that kind of gave us the blueprint to be able to understand, first of all, who we were, which is part of the greater house of Israel. And it also gave us the history of how did we arrive in America in 1555 as slaves. And then when we took it back to kind of, to trace our roots back to where we originally came from, and we understood that we originated from Israel. And so the history started, it actually began in the second destruction of the temple in 70 AD. And then we ended up in the interior of Africa, and then on the west coast of Africa, and then we were sold from there as slaves, starting in 1492 with the Portuguese, 1442, excuse me, sold into slavery in America. And then we experienced 400 years of slavery, and then after that we started having a reawakening to understand, okay, at one point or another, it's time to go back home. And so there were reawakenings all over the world. We weren't the only ones who reawakened to our tradition, to our cultural connection to this land. But somehow we were the only ones who were not accepted, and still are not accepted after 53 years. And I'm going to talk to you about a few things that we've actually given to Israel in terms of not only our support, but how we were so instrumental in building a lot of the institutions of Israel. And I'm going to tell you about that. You didn't know. But in the meanwhile, we have the school here.
Yeah, so this is a school that houses not just like elementary school, it's elementary, middle, and high school, right?
Right. This is the high school building right here.
Okay.
This side is the elementary school. That side is the middle school.
Oh, this side right here? That's middle school.
This side is the middle school. This side is the elementary school, and this is the high school. Now, most people don't know, but prior to the establishment of this school in 1993, we wanted to actually enroll into the Israeli educational system, but they prevented. Not only did they prevent us from being able to enroll, but they actually rejected us because they said that they didn't want their children to be affected by us, as if we're some, species from out of earth, or have some type of disease.
This is like local governance in Dimona?
This is the local government, no, not just
but
in Dimona,
of Israel.
In Israel.
Wow.
Generally, they didn't want to accept us into any of their institutions.
Wow.
So we had to build our own institutions because we had to continue to live.
Right.
And so the school came later. This was in 1993. We established a school because they didn't want to accept us into their institutions. But the children sat for the first 20 years of our stay here in Israel, from 1968 until approximately 1989. The children would wake up, sit on rocks outside, and that's how they studied. That's how they learned, because Israel didn't want to accept us into their educational institutions. And so in 1993, we managed to finally organize a lobby in the U.S. With Congress and some other organizations, the Congressional Black Caucus, and some other people who actually supported our cause here in Israel, and they funded the monies to be able to establish this school, this institution.
Oh,
and it was
beautiful.
opened in 1993.
Oh, so this was funded in part of the United States of America. They helped fund this. Wow.
They helped fund the school.
That's incredible.
They
That's
helped fund
awesome.
the school. It was great work by by those liaisons of ours, the international ambassador of the community, and a bunch of other people who were actually involved in this process. And so we established the school in 1993, and since then, all of the children of the community, which is approximately, I'd say, about 900 children, right, came through this institution, including me. I started actually right here. This was my first step into education. I
Wow.
was 6 years old when I came into this classroom here. I guess it's not that same classroom as it was, but I was a little guy. I graduated from this school, and my children hopefully are also going to matriculate through this system and graduate through the school. Now, there's some very important things also on the wall that you have
Should
to
we
see.
go? Yeah, let's.
You have to see these things. Let's start over.
And I want to ask you, the community, what's the actual size of the community, of the Hebrew Israelite community in Israel?
Today there are approximately 2,000
2,000 members?
men, women, and children. And we started with approximately 160 who made the first Aliyah to Israel in 1969. And we just continue to grow and to expand. This is one of the most important, if not the most important, images that we could have in the school, because this allows us to be able to connect to our skin color and have pride in who we are. Because in Israel, the kind of racism and discrimination that we experience, sometimes that could cause the children also to be a little less confident in who they are and not feel that they're accepted in the greater society. So starting at such a young age by allowing the children to be able to connect to images who look like them, and it gives them another sense of pride when they go out of the community as well. And so it's not a matter of race, right? It's not a matter of race, but we know that you won't find these kind of images anywhere else, right? You won't find these in other types of schools. And also, we have other images here as well, right? The Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs and Tim Brett and all of those people who've given a significant amount to society. But for our children, it's very, very important, first of all, from a young age, to take pride in us being Hebrew Israelites, to understand our cultural connection to this land, and to understand our rights also to be in this land, because sometimes you may believe that they're trying to deport us from Israel now.
That's a super nice classroom, though.
That's cute, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and as you were saying, everybody here is of African descent, right? Like,
African descent, that's
yeah.
right. These are the pioneers who, actually, this is my father here.
Oh, really? That's your father?
He's one of the pioneers of the community.
Wow.
He arrived in Israel in 1969. He was one of the original ones who left America in 1966 and who went to
What
Nigeria.
is his name?
His name is Bahuya.
Bahuya?
He passed away in 2007.
Wow.
Unfortunately, when I was 14 years old.
Wow.
And but I still remember, a lot of what he left with me, especially going through that entire cycle of, reawakening and then coming to Israel. He was one of the leaders of the community as well. So I think a lot of what he had, he kind of passed it on to me so that I can be able to continue that great legacy. So it's just beautiful to be able to see, that your biological father was one of the pillars in the building of this community.
That is amazing, man.
Yeah,
That's a beautiful legacy.
Also, and it's a cheret, we don't.
So there's an element of Zionism here, yeah? Like this is, so actually, I'm curious, I didn't talk about this yesterday at all. Are Hebrew Israelites considered Zionists?
Look, you have to differentiate though, because they're different factions, right?
Of Zionism?
Of Hebrew Israelites.
Okay.
And of Zionism as well.
Uh-huh.
Because some people view Zionism as, just the regular generic term of, the ability for the rights of Jews to have self-determination in their own homeland or to return back home. But you also have those people who are spiritual Zionists, as we are, that we say it's just not a matter of returning back home in the physical sense, but also decolonizing our minds from 2,000 years of what we experienced in the diaspora. And so coming back to Israel is just not a physical return back to Israel, but we want to just bring everything from the diaspora back to Israel. So what do we do with that? It's a physical, it's a mental and spiritual decolonization and return back to who we are. So we have the map of Israel, absolutely, and we have the Megillat Atzmaut, and we have the the flag, and we have the Declaration of Independence, and we have all of these things, and we have the Tikva, because we see ourselves as an intricate part of all of this. Right? This is an intricate part of our history as Hebrews, as children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who have returned back to this land after being in diaspora for 2,000 years, but not only just being in diaspora, experiencing physical and mental colonization, not only of our minds but of our bodies as well. 400 years of slavery is nothing light. That's 400 years of downtrodden and beating you down, and everything that we experience to just kind of strip us from our identity as Hebrews, and to cause us, as it says in the Bible, to forget the name of Israel and to erase it out of existence. So we see that this is a significant part of our development and our return back to Israel. But unfortunately, even though we submit to this, Israel doesn't see us as part of the greater Israeli house of Israel.
And to clarify for people who are watching this who are not 100% clear, not Israeli, don't speak Hebrew, this right here, it says En li eretz acheret, which means I have no other land. This is the Tikva, the national anthem. This is a picture of like the declaration of Israel as a country. This is a map of Israel that really only negates the Gaza Strip. Well, I'm sure this read, but this is showing the entire West Bank as territory of Israel, this is a very fundamental, like, Jewish Israelite way of declaring Israel as a state. And the Megillat Atzmaut, which is Declaration of Independence, like, this is very much showing love, and it's even got the seal of Israel. This is very much showing love to the modern state of Israel. So, I mean, hearing you say that the country outright rejects or attempts to reject, it's very disappointing in a lot of ways.
It's very unfortunate as well, because even when we arrived in Israel in 1969, we said that we were coming back to return back home, just like everybody else who returned back home. So you had Polish, Jews, and you had those who returned back from Germany, and you had those who came from Morocco, and you had those who came from Yemen. Okay, so you have those who are coming back from America from 400 years of slavery as well. So what is the issue with us coming back home? And initially we were accepted. The first members of the community were given full citizenship, but then in 1970, when they changed the law of return and said that only those who could prove that they're a Jew according to what the definition of a Jew is, that means that your mother either has to be a Jew or you have to be converted and not holding a different religion, then they just automatically wrote us out of the history book, and we weren't able to prove and to show what they were requesting. And so as a result of that, they just said, okay, you guys are not part of this whole family, so you have to go. And so our political fight didn't actually start now. It started in the 1970s.
Wow, so it's been a while.
So it's been a long while. It's been a long while. And, we're talking 2022. Usually after so long and after you've given so much, I'll give you a few examples, right? In 1975, there was the Resolution 3379 that compared Zionism to racism, or said Zionism was racism, right? Israel didn't send any representatives to represent Israel in the UN at that point. But you know who did represent Israel? We did. Members of our community went to the UN to represent Israel in saying that Israel is not a racist state and that Zionism is the right of us to be able to return back home. Okay? Whoever you are, black, white, as long as you're part of the house of Israel, you have the right to be able to return home. In 2001, for example, right, you had the Durban conference in South Africa, that at one point or another they were supposed to be talking about human rights and things of that nature, but then they started attacking Israel. And we were there again to represent Israel as those who were saying, no, what you're saying is absolutely incorrect, because here we are, black people from Israel, we live in Israel, and we're the ones who are able to give you a different account on who an Israeli is, or who is part of the house of Israel. Also, we serve in the military. 100% induction into the military. That there is no other community in Israel who 100% of their children who finish high school is inducted into the military. And we do that not because we're looking for something in return. We do that because we actually feel, you know, the necessity to go and to represent like everybody else.
That military thing is important. Is it government mandated or that's voluntary from the community?
We volunteered to go.
100%.
100%.
Wow.
We volunteered to go.
Wow.
They didn't, as a matter of fact, not only we volunteered to go, they didn't want us because they said, no, we will not induct anyone who does not have Israeli citizenship. Members of the community went in front of the Kiryat and laid on the ground in front of the Kiryat for days and said, we're not leaving. Well, it wasn't me because I was a young guy. You know? Yeah. But they said they weren't leaving until we are able to serve like everybody else. Every other mother is sending their child to the military, not knowing what's going to happen with them. And why shouldn't we as well? Every other child is going to protect this country, protect the citizens. So we also have an obligation to do so as well. So every opportunity that we have and every option that we have to be able to give to the land and to serve in whatever capacity we're able to serve, we try and do so. But seemingly, when it's beneficial, then they want to call on us. It works good for them. But when it's not beneficial...
And this is also like a look for you at some...
Yeah, there you go.
There's pictures of the members serving the IDF.
Right. This is the opening of the school, 1993, cutting the ribbon. This is part of our history in America, slaves, Dr. Martin Luther King. And something interesting about Dr. Martin Luther King is that in April 4th, 1968, when he gave that speech, April 3rd actually, April 4th he was assassinated, but he gave the speech that I may not, I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land, but I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. And what do you know, exactly a month later, Hebrew Israelites, black people from America, after 400 years of slavery and 2,000 years of exile, laid their foot once again on the soil of Eretz Israel, actually realizing Dr. Martin Luther King's vision. And now you have an entire community who we don't consider ourselves as African Americans, because African American doesn't really give you any type of connection to a specific, what kind of identity is that you're connected to two different landmass. But we're Hebrews. And Hebrew means that we are descendants of Abraham, who was the first Hebrew. We're descendants as Israelites, we're descendants of Jacob, whose name was changed into Israel, and the 12 tribes of Israel. And so our tribal connection is to Judah. So we are Jews in that sense. So we're African Hebrew Israelites, Judeans, that we're returning back to this land. So that's how we identify ourselves, not as Americans, Afro-Americans, African-Americans. Has no relevance to us at all.
So we just met More Uri, which is
Yes.
Uri the teacher, here from the school.
And I've been teaching here. We're celebrating 30 years in the school. We opened on the 1st of September 1993. And so we're celebrating at this point, going into our 30th year. And it's excellent. It's a school that runs from first grade all the way to 12th grade. One of the main subjects that's taught here is culture and tradition of the community. We also have a group of final exam in culture and tradition, which is recognized by the state of Israel.
Tell them how were the children studying before we had a school?
Prior to opening the school, we have a big celebration on this Yom Rishon, representing 50 years of the Kingdom School in Holiness. Because prior to opening this school, our children were learning in the houses, in the park, wherever we could find a space to teach the children, we were teaching them, because we weren't able, because of our status, to have a school. And so we were blessed to open the school in 1993. But in 1972, September the 11th, we opened the Kingdom School in Holiness, and that ran all the way until we opened Beit Sefer Akbar in 1983.
All right, brother. I'm happy we're finally doing this. This has been a long time coming. I wanted to ask some of the deeper questions, because during this whole research trip about Israel and the Palestinian conflict and everything that goes on in this crazy land, you guys came up into my life, and I've been so interested, because being an American Israeli, the second that we connected, for the first time when we connected on WhatsApp, there was a side of me that felt at home. I was like, there's just something that not everybody else that lives here will understand in the connection between the two of us. While we're not ethnically the same, it's just having that connection with the United States of America, whether it be culture or history, whatever it is. There's something that I feel at least binds us together. So I want to get your perspective, first of all, from the Hebrew Israelite community. What are your thoughts on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? It's a deep, hard question to answer, but like, if you had to speak for the community or generalize, like, what would you feel are the aspirations? What do people want to see? How do people feel like we should react and connect towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
You see, we always said that, and this is nothing we just saying now. We said it ever since we arrived in Israel. We're about peace,
Right.
and that's why this village is called the Village of Peace. And if we brought people from America, from some people who were middle-class citizens, and other people who, some of them may have been in gangs, other people may have been on the streets. We brought people from different places, different communities, and we established this Village of Peace together, where 50 years people could move around without locking their doors, and no guns and no violence and no
Right.
drugs and all of those things. So we were able to create, as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel called it, a miracle in the desert, something that nobody expected. And so if we were able to create that, then I'm sure that we were able to find a solution for Israelis and for Palestinians. But the beginning stage has to be from a point of desire. Right? Both sides have to want to reach a solution, reach a conclusion, and we have to understand also at the end of the day, we're actually family. Whether you like it or not, Abraham had 2 children, Yitzhak and Ishmael.
Right.
And we are cousins. And so the Palestinians are not going anywhere, neither are we. So we have to find a solution that will be able to allow both of us to coexist. And it doesn't mean that either of us will have to give up our own aspirations, but it means that we both would have to give up a portion of what we desire as a whole, so that we could be able to find a solution to live here together in peace. Outside of that, you're going to still have mothers on both sides who are going to be crying about their children.
Right, of course.
You're going to still have people on both sides who are experiencing anxiety. You're going to have people, children who are growing up in a society where they feel like the other is the enemy. And just so you could know, a lot of what was established now, or a lot of the tension between the Palestinians and the Israelis, it was actually created by the Romans. You see, they, excuse me, not the Romans, the British. They caused both sides to believe that we both are each other's enemies. And then what they did is they pulled out. All right, they left. They said, we're not going to.
They gave up. They were like, we're out. It's too complicated.
We caused them both to believe that they're each other's enemies from what they said to the Jews and what they said to the Arabs. They promised so many things to the Arabs. They promised so many things to the Jews. And at one point, they just pulled out and allowed, the chaos to just remain as it is now. And so we'll have to actually sit down in truth and search for a solution, because at the end of the day, I think we agree on more than 90% of the things. We both want to live in peace. We both want to see our children prosper. We both want to be able to take care of our families. We both want to enjoy the beauties that Israel brings with it. We both want to enjoy a society that is built on fundamental principles that we could be able to both connect to from Abraham, our father. And so unless we connect on those bases, as opposed to just political bases, I don't see a different solution.
It's beautiful. It's beautifully said.
That has to be our starting step. And from that point, I think we could be able to establish a whole lot. Because really, in true honesty, when we brought Winnie Mandela to Israel in 2005, and she was saying that she wanted to help to find a solution for the Palestinians and the Israelis, and she said that she believed that here in the community we have something we're able to give, because we're not coming from a political perspective, right? We're coming from a family orientated perspective, understanding that we are all family. And we understand both sides, because we understand the side of the Israelis that are saying, okay, we have the right to be able to return back to Israel, and we have the right to establish our homeland back in our ancestral homeland after 2,000 years. But then so that's our portion, because we also came back to Israel to return back home after 2,000 years of exile. But then you also have people who've been here thousands
yeah.
of years. They established their life here, and
true.
it's almost impossible to ask somebody to uproot themselves and to leave and expect that there won't be any retribution. So I think we have to just deal with the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter is that everybody wants to coexist, but nobody wants to give up on anything.
Right.
And it's not just about land, it's not just about territory, it's way beyond that. It's an ideological thing that causes people not to feel like, okay, I'm giving up on something that I feel is very important, and so I'm going to be the one who's been duped. I don't want to be duped. So I'm going to try and get as much as I can from the other side.
I don't want to feel like I lost something out of this deal.
I don't want to feel like the other side got over on me.
Right, because everyone lost so much. It's like, if I give up now,
and
you're right, that's such a wrong perspective to have.
We may as well.
Yeah.
We may as well. Now, what are we going to continue to live in fear? Are we going to continue to lose children? Continue to cause families to suffer? Is that actually what we came back to Israel to establish? Is that what we want? The Palestinians don't want that, neither does the Israelis. But also, it's a political thing that, and this is what I think, this is my own personal perspective, right? But on both sides, both of the political leadership from the Palestinian side and from the Israeli side have something to gain from the continuation of this conflict.
Yeah.
And so instead of them bringing it to a close, then one side continues to push their narrative because it gives them political points, and it causes them to be seen in the eyes of the world as miskanim, and we need to help them, and so you get significant amounts of donations and monies that are going in their own pockets, and they're fattening their pockets on the backs of the citizens, which is very unfortunate. And so if the political people wanted to bring this to a close, they can, but I don't believe it's in their hands. I think it's actually in the hands of the ground roots people, like me and you, to be able to sit down and have a conversation. I can sit down and have a conversation with a Palestinian, and we don't have any animosity towards each other. How about that? We don't have any animosity towards each other, but the media and the political leadership wants us to believe we're both enemies. It's a hoax. We are not enemies, man.
Amen to that.
We are not enemies. And so as soon as we get that into our brains on the ground roots level, then we'll be able to actually begin to operate together, to work together, to put pressure on both sides, to cause them to come to some type of solution that will allow us to coexist.
Right.
Regardless of what they want to do. We want to coexist. We want to live in peace. And you also have those organizations who are starting to move around and saying that Jews and Palestinians refuse to be enemies. Right?
At some point during that, you said something like along the lines of us, right? Like me and you. So this is like, again, I don't mean to point and press on this stuff, but I'm personally curious as well, and I'm sure that there's people who are watching are curious. My only experience perceived with your community has ever been in the United States of America, which what I thought was your community, which I was known to it as, I think it's called Black Hebrew Israelites specifically. And I think I've come across them once in New York City, once in Chicago. Can you explain to the audience, because you explained to me over the phone very briefly, but I also want to learn from you now, why this is not the same community, and what are the differences? I mean, you don't have to tell me what their differences are, but like what your beliefs are within this ideology, within this people group.
Hebrew Israelite is not just an ideology, but it's an ethnicity, and it's a belonging to a group of people that dates all the way back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so within this great family, then you have different factions. You have different people who subscribe to different, ideologies, but the general aspect is not an ideological one. But you have people, who, and it's not my job to speak about their side, right? Yeah. I don't know really what they subscribe to like that. Although I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's still family. Whether we believe or we subscribe to the same things, but they remain family. However, the community here is a community that decided that we were going to come back to reestablish ourselves in our homeland in Israel. And so we're not looking to cause any animosity. We're not looking to argue, because not only, and it's funny because a lot of times we speak about those groups and we say that they claim that they're the real Jews, and the Jews are not. They're imposters and things of that nature. But remember, I also hear from Jews here and other places in the world that Hebrew Israelites, we are imposters.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to get to the core of.
Which is strange,
Right.
strange because our history speaks on its own, and so for us to be told that we are imposters, and we, for example, even the community here, although we've given so much to Israel, but they still say that we illegally immigrated to Israel. We are not part of the house of Israel. We are not Jews. We just came here looking. I don't even know why they say we came here, because people came from, middle class citizens to Israel to live in Dimona, from New York, from Chicago, from Miami.
Which, to be fair, Dimona is not like, I don't want to say anything bad about Dimona, because it is wonderful in a lot of aspects, but it's not. It's a city in the middle of the desert.
You can't compare it to New York. Coming from middle class.
It's no New York City.
New York City to Dimona.
Yeah.
We came here in the 1960s. Now imagine nothing was here in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Nothing at all. Everything that you see now
Pretty desolate.
is developed. So why would we come all the way from New York City and Chicago and Miami and Atlanta and San Francisco to Israel to live in the desert as illegal immigrants, or they even call us Mistananim, which are infiltrators? For what? Why would we come here? No, we had a different idea and reason for coming back home. And so still, we hear also from our end, you guys are imposters, you guys are not the real people, you guys are trying to usurp our identity. And then you also hear from the other side, from Hebrew Israelites in America, who says the same thing. Now I'm saying that you're wrong and you're wrong, right? It's not our job to determine for everybody else what their identity is. I know who I am. Now, you can't tell me who I am. I can tell you who I am. And I can't tell you who you are. You can tell me who you are. And as soon as we come and we discuss that from a perspective of everybody is coming to listen to the other person, as opposed to trying to determine for the other person who they are and who they're not, then that's where the problem starts. And so the communities in America, they're not actually connected to us in terms of their ideological or their historical aspect, because a lot of us, developed in Chicago and in New York, but when we came to Israel, we said that we were coming back to Israel to reestablish ourselves with our homeland and with our people here. Now, whether our people being somebody who came from Yemen, somebody who came from Morocco, somebody who came from Nigeria, somebody who came from Liberia, somebody who came from Europe, at the end of the day, as long as we all subscribe, and it's not just about ethnicity, and it's not just about skin color, but it's about subscribing to a culture, right? And as long as we are all agreeing that this is the culture that we're all going to subscribe to, we're family. Family doesn't mean that you have to be from the same bloodline all the time.
Right, that's true.
So, I don't have a problem with somebody who agrees with me and who's willing to stand beside me and to say, okay, we believe in the same thing also, although we come from different places, but we're going to stand on this belief together. And that's why people can convert to Judaism, because some people say they're going to convert because they want to become a part of that family. So what's the problem with people who are already a part of that family remaining a part of that family? But it comes down to skin color at that point, because in Israel, especially in Israel, there's an idea that black people cannot really be from the house of Israel. And the reason for that is because the establishment of what is actually known today as, the streams of Judaism, Orthodox and Conservative and Reform, a lot of that was actually developed in Europe, even with the establishment of the State of Israel, right? Herzl really didn't think about the fact that there may be Jews in Ethiopia.
Right.
He didn't think about that. They were looking for a solution to the Jewish problem in Europe. And then only later on did they understand that there are Jews in other places as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to be grown enough now to understand that it's not about skin color. That shouldn't be the determining factor for if or not we're actually going to be accepted into the house of Israel. It's more so about now, what do you subscribe to? Do you believe that Israel is for the Hebrews, for the Israelites, for those who are of the lineage of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob? Are you here to give a hand in the building of this community, of this greater community? Are you here to support the development of the institutions? Are you going to protect the country and the citizens? If you are, then Alan Wasalan, welcome. If you're not, then you shouldn't be here. But it shouldn't be about your subscription to halachic law, because I know that more than 60% of Israelis don't subscribe
Secular.
to halakha.
Yeah.
So it can't be that.
I think there's some sort of deep-rooted trauma within the Jewish community, especially from Europe, that, I mean, Mizrahi Jews like myself, you know, my family came from Baghdad, where we had to run from Iraq to get here. We were an afterthought. Like, the government didn't really think of us. We definitely weren't the first. The first were the quote-unquote white Jews, lighter-skinned Jews from Europe.
Right.
And I think there's this deep-rooted trauma that sort of neglects, up until this day, and I've been learning this through the Druze community and through the Samaritan community, just speaking to different communities where we as Jews who are at the helm of the ship of this country are influenced a lot by this European colonial-centric way to sort of shift the perspective of what this country should be, the ideologues, instead of looking at it as one big mishpacha, one big mishpucha, where some speak Arabic, and some speak Amharic, and some speak Iraqi Baghdadian, and some speak Yiddish, and some speak English. Instead of seeing it as one big mishpucha, we're breaking ourselves up. We're colonizing ourselves from the inside. And that's something that I've come to understand. Now, I want to delve a little bit deeper into it. And this, I hope that this question doesn't come off as stupid. But so, do you also see, like, when we were speaking about Martin Luther King earlier, do you guys also see all the entirety of people who are like people of color or black people in the United States as descendants of the Hebrews, of the 12 tribes of Israel? Or is it you specifically the people who have moved here are able to isolate and see where they came from? Or is it everyone as a whole, like everyone who lives on the African subcontinent, North Africa, all come from the same place?
No, everybody don't come from the same place, but it's hard to determine who comes from where,
right, until
you see what their culture is, right? Our culture gives a very clear indication of where we come from, and our reconnection to that culture began in the 1960s, right? It wasn't just an awakening out of nowhere, but it was a process. Even throughout slavery, we managed to hold on to a lot of the minhagim, right? A lot of the customs, but we had to do it in a way where the slave master wouldn't know that we were holding on to those customs, because it was punishable by death. Right? You couldn't just read the Bible, or you couldn't, really outwardly pray, and so we had to do it in different ways. So what we'll do, for example, is out in the cotton fields, they would sing songs about over the Jordan and about Canaan's land and about those things, so they could be able to pass it on and song from generation to generation. But then once we were allowed to actually start outwardly keeping some of our customs, then that's when the awakening happened. And so in the 1960s, there was a great reawakening, because that was the time that black people started understanding, okay, something is wrong here, right? It can't be that we are experiencing Jim Crow, and we're being lynched, and we're being this, and all these things are happening. We don't have even, basic rights here in America, and but we were emancipated, and we were supposedly given rights. I mean, something is wrong here. And so you had, the great freedom fighters like Martin Luther King, and you had the Malcolm X's, and you had the Black Panthers, and you had Marcus Garvey and his movement, and then you had the Hebrew Israelites as well, who we had started understanding, okay, well, how do we get to America in the first place? Where were we brought to America from? And then we took it back there, okay, how do we get to West Africa? Why were we sold into America as slaves by the locals? Because obviously we weren't the locals.
I see. See, I didn't hear this perspective. Oh, interesting.
Right.
So it's like we traced
it back. Let's go back. Okay, so because
people will come with this aspect of like black people are black people, which is a very racist like perspective, but it's like they don't see the different ethnicities that live within the African continent. So what you're saying, what the claim is that you were sold into slavery by other people,
by other locals,
who saw you as different, like they saw Jews as different.
Because we were different.
Because you were different.
we were different.
And that's the reason that you were sold into slavery.
We were the ones who migrated there.
Interesting.
We were the ones who were looking, to establish ourselves, because we had migrated. Remember, in 70 AD, when the Romans came to capture Jerusalem, we migrated to North Africa, and then into the interior of Africa, and then afterwards, around 630 to 650 AD, when the Muhammadans, the Muslims, came to capture North Africa, and then you began to see that there was also slave trades in Africa, right, by the various African countries and tribes and things of that nature. So they sold us, and then we migrated kind of inside of the interior of Africa, and then we ended up on the west coast of Africa. And on the west coast of Africa, we were there for a period of time up until approximately 1442, when the Portuguese arrived. And when the Portuguese arrived, and then after that you had the Dutch, and then you had the English, and then you had the German, and you had the other ones. But what they did was the locals bought guns and all types of things that will allow themselves to be able to enhance themselves militarily. And in return, they helped to capture those who they knew were not locals like us. And we were sold into slavery in America. And so when we started backtracking, we understood, okay, so we arrived there because we were fleeing from Israel. Okay, so that means that we are actually from Israel, and we managed to get here just because we fled. Okay, and then you understand that also 25% approximately of those who were taken into America as slaves, mostly from Igbo land in Nigeria, they had what are called Hebrewisms, right? So they held a lot of those Jewish Hebraic tenets, right, and customs that they managed to hold on to for years. And so when we look at the history again, no, I'm not saying that everybody is, because everybody is probably not, right? But let's start with the people who say they are. Let's start with the people who have been for years keeping these customs, right?
Who feel it, who know it on the inside.
Who feel it, who know it, who's connected to it, who want to go back home. Let's start with them. And then once we start with them, then whoever else, we could be able to go back and we could check their history. But we're coming with a full history showing you that this is our migration pattern, right? This is how we arrived in America as slaves in the first place. And so just like you have the B'nai Anusim, right, who fled Spain and Portugal in 1492, and after that, when they had the what do you call it in Spain and Portugal?
The Inquisition?
The Inquisition, right? They fled there, those who decided they weren't going to become Christians, right? They fled. And then today, or some of them also remain Christians, and after years and years and years, now it's hard to be able to go back and to trace their roots. But you still consider them as part of the House of Israel, although it's hard to trace their roots. But you have people like the Ethiopian community who maintained for 2,000 years. One of the only communities who maintained a full 2,000 years, and they're still not accepted. So I wonder, probably it is a thing of race. Like
for sure.
It is a thing of color,
sure.
right? It is a
For
thing
sure.
of where you're from ethnically.
There's no doubt.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when we look and we see, okay, that you have, for example, a few thousand Ethiopians who were promised to be brought to Israel 20 years ago, and they still haven't been brought up. But then you see that Israel said they were prepared this quick to be able to bring up approximately 300,000 Jews from Russia and Ukraine. Then it makes you wonder. Or when you say that approximately 86% of those who were brought to Israel over the last 10 years, according to the statistics, don't consider themselves as Jews, and they aren't halakhic Jews. But then you want to deport members of our community because you don't consider us as halakhic Jews. Well, the question becomes then, what about those who bluntly say that they have no connection, but we make small options for them to be able to be accepted. So we're going to say, okay, well, I know that we say that you have to be born to a Jewish mother, or you have to have converted, but for you all, we're going to say, your father is enough, or your grandfather is enough, right? They can be accepted. So why don't we make those same kind of concessions for us?
Deportations. This is one of the first things you talked to me on the phone. It was something that you wanted to highlight. And I didn't know. I didn't know until I looked up articles online, and I honestly did not understand. So I'd love to understand, like, what is this hardship that your community is dealing with, the deportations of members of the community here?
It's actually It actually goes all the way back to the 1960s, because in 1968, 1969, the first members of the community who arrived in Israel were given legal citizenship, and they were given, all of the additions that an Ole receives, right? And they were also sent to a kibbutz mabarot to be received into the Israeli society, and to kind of go through whatever process is required so that you can be able to fit into the society. But in 1970, the law of return was changed, and the new law of return said that only those who are Jewish are able to return, and who we determine to be a Jew is that person who either their mother was a Jew or was converted. And so we didn't fit that description, and so because we didn't fit that description, they automatically revoked the legal status that had been given to all of the members of the community initially, and from that point and going forward, we became illegal residents in Israel. And so it took us all the way up to approximately 1989, 1990, that beforehand, in 1971, members of the community were deported from Israel. 1973, another deportation took place. 1986, another deportation took place. They were just trying to get the entire community out of here, and they made it clear that they were going to rid Israel of all community members. And even some of the governmental authorities said in 7 days there won't be any more Hebrews in Israel. And so in 1990, we came to some type of agreement with the Israeli government and the American government that those who have been here all these years will receive at least temporary residency. And so we began that process of providing temporary residency, but you know how things work in Israel, or maybe you don't. But nothing happens like that.
The bureaucracy is slow.
The bureaucracy, not only is it slow, at one point people change, and then the processes get stuck, and then sometimes they don't even continue, and you would never know until you actually go into the artifacts and you start to dig up all the information, and then you see, okay, nobody has even dealt with this for years. And so some members of the community were just left out, right? Even though the agreement was that everybody was going to receive legal status, some members of the community were left out, and they never received anything. And in 2003, the Minister of Interior, Avram Foraz, he ordered to provide permanent residency to all the members of the community, regardless to if you have something now, if you don't have anything, if you were left behind beforehand, everybody should receive. Do you think that happened? Absolutely not. They started the process, and he was out of there within a year's time, and then after that, the next person that came in was like, oh, I don't know nothing about that. So that never happened. In 2014, there was another agreement made with Gideon Sa'ar. He was the Minister of Interior, and he said, okay, well, we'll start a process like this. First, everybody who was inducted into the military and served in the IDF, all of them are eligible to receive full Israeli citizenship without, renouncing your American citizenship. So we began that process, and then he said, okay, in addition to that, all of their family members as well, starting with the parents, and then all of the children who are under 17 or 18 are able to receive also full citizenship. We started that process, and then he said, okay, now in addition, everybody who don't have full citizenship right now, and you only have permanent residency, in 5 years you're able to submit for full citizenship, and you're able to receive full citizenship. And those who are behind them, who have permanent residency or who have temporary residency, you could submit for permanent residency and then for full citizenship.
Wow, confusing. That's very confusing.
Not only was it confusing,
Wow.
but he was in office for 1 year, and when he left and Ariel came back, Ariel was like, I'm not dealing with that. I'm not dealing with that. I'm not doing anything. And from 2015 up until 2021, we were consistently submitting lists of the members of the community who still have been left behind. And it's not that they were left behind because they were not on the listings and all the things that we hear in the media, which is absolute nonsense. It was left behind because the members, or because the clerks in these offices, they just refused to carry out their jobs. They just didn't do it.
So up until today,
there's
people who just won't receive it, are not getting it.
Let me tell you, it's not that they're just not getting it. Also, there are people who were born here, 2 generations of people who were born and raised in Israel. don't have any legal status in any other country, and they're not even eligible because they're third generation, fourth generation of Americans. And so from third generation and on, you're not eligible to receive American citizenship.
Right.
And so not only do they not have American citizenship, they don't have Israeli citizenship. So as far as the system is concerned, they don't exist. So they don't have any access to the local services like the health and the education and the welfare, and they don't have work permits, they don't have jobs, they don't have anything, and they just have to exist as nobodies in this world. And instead of the Ministry of Interior closing out this saga, and we're not talking about a lot of people, right? We're only talking about approximately 135 people. Now imagine this, 135 people, they're giving us hell to settle cases for 135 people who've already been here for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, people who came to Israel in the 1960s and were revoked, their citizenship was revoked from them, and now they're about 80 years old. Where do you expect these people to go? You're going to deport them out of here. But what happened was, and this is you have to understand how deep it is, right? In 2021 April, or 2021 August, the Ministry of Interior said, and the Population Control Department spoke to me personally, and I was up there as one of the members of the community, and what they said was that we want to settle these cases once and for all, because there are people who've been here for way too long and they don't have the proper status, and we want to make sure that this doesn't continue. Okay? We submitted the listing of the people who don't have full citizenship. They came back to us approximately 8 months later, in April of 2021, and said, listen, we're sorry. We went over all the listings, we went over all the information, but, and I know that we said we were going to give you all status, but unfortunately, nobody meets any criteria whatsoever to receive any kind of residency in Israel, and as a result of that, everybody is receiving a letter of deportation. You have 60 days to be out of Israel. These are people who've been here for 30 years, 40 years, who have children, who have grandchildren, who don't have any place else to go. You're going to deport them out of here, out of Israel, claiming that they don't have any type of, they don't meet any criteria. And then when we look deeper into it, we understood that there were cases where Israel settled cases for children and for parents of illegal residents or whatever, and there were 4 criteria that you needed to follow, you needed to meet. 1, you needed to be born in Israel. 2, you needed to speak the language. 3, you needed to matriculate through some type of educational system. 4, your parents would have to come to Israel on some type of legal document through one of the accepted ways of migration into Israel. So whether through the port or through Ben Gurion airport or whatever that may be. We met all the criteria, but they still rejected us. They said, no, that's not for you all, that's for the Russians. You don't consider the Russians to be in the same group as we are. But you say that they're illegal and we're illegal, but they can receive the legal status and we can't. Why is that? We don't owe you any explanations. And so then they began the process of deportation, wherein they came down to Dimona in November of 2021 as well. They began the process. They were looking for members of the community who are here illegally. So they rushed into houses and they rushed into places of business of ours, and they rushed into some of the offices looking for members of the community. And then we established a coalition of Knesset members, of ministers, of organizations, human rights organizations. We also brought in a few people from the U.S. Congress so that we could be able to prevent this deportation from happening. You still have people who are 30 and 40 years old who don't have any type of legal status in any country, and Israel simply refuses to provide to them legal status, claiming that they're not Jews. But you have approximately 75,000 Ukrainians who are in Israel illegally, in addition to another 125,000 people from other places in the world who are here illegally, but they're starting to provide to them some type of legal status in Israel. Again, I'm saying it's just it's a race thing, it's a racial thing, and it's very unfortunate because we've given so much to Israel, and for us to be treated in this way, it's just sort of like a spit in the face.
I don't really even know what to say about it. Like, I don't think there's anything I could say that will reconcile, but I think it's important that people hear this perspective, because I personally haven't seen it really talked about, not often at least, or not, if it is, not often enough. And I'm very well versed in Israel and the politics, society that goes on here, and I didn't hear about it, not once. Not in the last 10 years, that's for sure. So if this does anything, you know, I'm not taking any sort of stance on anything, but like, if this gets to anybody to at least hear about this stuff, to dig deeper into it. You know, there's a beautiful, vibrant community here. I've only been here for a day and a half, but you know, it's like,
you have to stay. It's enough room for you to stay.
I'm definitely coming back, man. It's not nearly enough time. It's an amazing, vibrant community that, just like you said, I feel like provides. There's a heart here.
Right.
Why get rid of this? Why? What would be the reason?
Because
of skin color?
Because
and it's like, you know, I come from a perspective, I feel really blessed with this. My parents, while they have their own biases on different nationalities and ethnicities, they never taught me to be racist or to look at skin color. Growing up in America, like, I don't see you any different than me, and I can't even really relate to people who do. I have a hard time seeing us as different people. I just see you as family. I see you as mishpacha, especially when you tell me what you believe in. Well, it's not any different than anyone else because of the color of your skin. I got a dark color skin too, and the people who are white color skin, it doesn't matter to me. Like, the color of skin doesn't matter. So I can never understand or relate to those people, especially when they're trying to bring it to a government level of like deporting and kicking people out based on skin color. I really can't understand it. Does the community here see themselves and see us, Jews like me, and Jews that are Ashkenazi, that come from European countries, one and the same?
For us, it's about the connection to the culture, right? It's not a matter of skin color, because I could have a child who is an albino, and I could have another one who is as black as people from Sudan, and then I can have someone else who is mulatto, and I can have someone else but does that mean that because of their skin pigmentation that they're different people? No, it doesn't mean that. But up until now, we haven't been the ones who've been rejected anybody. We've been the ones who've been rejected. And so it's not about us seeing ourselves as part of that house, but it's about those people who claim to be part of that house to be able to accept and to understand that there are other people as well. We don't need to prove to anyone our stance on who we are, unless any other people decide that, okay, these are the criteria that we made up, and if you meet our criteria, then you can be a part of us, right? Like, you can come into our house. But no, it's not that we're coming into your house. We're coming into the house of Israel. And the house of Israel doesn't belong to any specific small group of people who've taken it on as their own project. That's not how that works. Now, I know that there are some people who would like to believe that they're the ones, because they're in control of the rabbinate, and because they're in control of the Ministry of Interior, that they decide who is and who isn't. But that's not how that works. There are very specific criteria for people who, first of all, your belief, right? Before anything, your belief will determine. And then after that, if we want to talk about ethnicity, then that's something else, because what about the people who convert? And they may not be from the same ethnicity. So what does that mean? They don't fit with the family now? No, they took on that belief system, and so now they took on that belief system. Now they're able to be accepted as part of that whole house. We don't need to take on that belief system, because we never let it go. We've held on to this belief system for years and years. I can't tell you about anybody else's story, but I can tell you about mine. And my story says that I'm back in my homeland after 2,000 years of exile and 400 years of slavery, after being raped and pillaged and discriminated against and so many other things, and hung and whatever else you want to think about, and and killed and segregated against. And now we're finally back home. Now, the people who are here as well experience what they experience in their own diaspora as well. In Europe, in Arabian countries, in North Africa, everybody experienced what their own experience. Now, instead of accepting everybody and saying, welcome back home, we're so happy that you're back home after everything you experienced, they forget what experiences they had in different places, and they come back here. And that's why that Bible verse, I love it so much. You should love your neighbors, or love the foreigners, and remember that you were a foreigner in the house of Egypt. We can see each other as brothers and sisters, not based on the color of our skin, but on the content of our character. But unfortunately, I can't see that happening anytime soon right now in Israel, because the mindset is just not there. There's a very strong racist ideology in Israel.
I think, in my opinion, it's a process of learning and unlearning a lot of things that we were taught, especially like Israeli youth like me, who are kind of on the outside of this periphery, and just quite frankly not giving more of a damn about it. Like, just people not. You ask the average Israeli. And again, like, there's not to wash it away with this, but this is such a traumatized group of people from every aspect, brought into really ugly ways, and I've seen it myself on my side, and it's something that, like, I just feel like more people need to be having conversations like this, like you and I are doing, and hopefully that's the trickling into it, right? Like, maybe you don't have hope that this will change anytime soon, but maybe stuff like this can be the beginnings of it.
Look what we managed to build here. Imagine how much more can we do had we just had the tools. We don't have the moral right to say anything about anti-Semitism. We don't have the moral right to do so when we are oppressing our own people here. Out there they say ethnicity. We say, okay, Jews, of course, they may not be of the same color, but they're from the same ethnic group, right? Or from the same nation. Sionut was not just a matter of us returning back home physically, but it was a matter of us returning back home and once again making a switch in our brains and in our minds and in our psyche and becoming who we are. Now what do? We were given a mandate, and if we don't carry out that mandate, we don't have any rights to remain in Israel. How are we going to fix anybody else's problems if we are experiencing that right here within ourselves? So some serious work needs to be done at home.
Is Hebrew Israelite a religion?
No.
Do people subscribe here to a religion?
No.
It's not a religion.
No.
But you also wouldn't say that you're atheist, because you believe in God.
We believe in God. We believe in the tenets of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We believe in the God of our forefathers, Abraham, and Isaac, and Jacob. But being a Hebrew Israelite, that's our nationality.
That's your nationality. Can you convert to become a Hebrew Israelite? Is that something you can join?
You can join the community itself, but you can't convert and become a Hebrew Israelite, because being a Hebrew Israelite is a birthright. It's way more than just a peoplehood, but you can actually take on the tenets of the belief system and become part of the community itself, but you can't become an African Hebrew Israelite.
Right. When you say like practice the tenets, it's like practicing veganism and the Shabbat, right? The Shabbat ideology where you fast. And what about when it comes to like marriage and intermingling between society? Can you marry? Do people here marry from the outside?
We have people who've married from the outside, and they're an integral part of the community as well now. For example, my wife is not from the community.
Oh no!
Right? She's not from the community, but we subscribe to some of the same moral and ethical codes of conduct, and that has to be the foundation before going anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, then we have the cultural tenets, and then on top of that we have the customs, right? But the moral and the ethical codes of conduct, that has to be the foundation where we both meet, because if we don't agree there, we're not going to continue on to the next phase, and then we're definitely not going to continue on to the next phase after that in terms of customs. So yes, we can marry outside the community.
Ashriel, brother.
Yes.
It's been an absolute pleasure. First getting to know you and hearing the story in a deeper way. I really can only hope that this implores people to come out here and learn. You guys are open community, welcome for anybody to come and learn, right?
We welcome everybody who wants to come, not just to learn, but we are also open to learn from others. But we want to show what we managed to build here in Israel after 53 years. So if anybody asks, what did we manage to do in Israel all of these years, then we have a lot to show for it. And we welcome everybody to come and to check us out.
And I know that this won't be my last time here, but where can people find you and what you guys are doing if they're looking for it?
You can find me on Instagram on Ashriel Moore, ASHRIEL MOORE, or on Facebook, same ASHRIEL MOORE. And you could also go on the Hebrew Israelite page, www.African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem.com, and you can find us there.
All those links will be down below in the description so you can find it, and I will see you guys in the next video. I love you long time, class. Goodbye.